So thank you for joining us today. We are going to be looking at developing voice and choice in ELD instruction. My name is Kimberly Nix. I'm the Director of Professional Development here at TextHelp. Just quickly to give you my background, I taught for 18 years, predominantly in Title I middle schools. I'm a reading specialist. I'm also a person with very specific learning needs. I had an inclusion classroom for 14 years. I worked with ELDs for 7 years. And so, you figure I'm about 97 years old, but I look good. My equally good-looking partner in crime here today is Corey Brooks. And Corey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is Corey Brooks. I taught for over 12 years, starting out in traditional public schools, then moving to charter hybrid schools, and then I moved into project-based learning. That is where I got my master's in education, and I finished up my classroom experience in a project-based learning, blended learning classroom teaching middle school humanities. And then I went into educational sales and found my way to TextHelp. I love ed tech and I love our tools. Bringing access to all is really important to me. I too struggled in school, specifically in math and reading. And so I just love our tools for being able to access digitally for all learners. So I'm going to send it back to Kimberly. Before doing that, I am your territory sales director in Northern California, but I do live in Southern California. And just to give you a little idea, we have our West Coast team, starting with Nora Trentacosta, who is our regional sales director. She resides in Northern California, and she is the territory or the regional sales director for all of the West Coast, from Alaska to Hawaii and all the way down. Greg Crisolo is your territory sales director in Southern California. And then to round off our team, we do have Greg Brandon, and he is our customer success manager. He lives in Massachusetts on the East Coast, and he takes care of all of us and all of our needs. And right now I'm going to send it back to Kimberly to introduce our webinar today. Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome. So you've got two crazy middle school people who both struggle with reading and math. What a beautiful thing right there. Okay, so we want to focus in on using Read and Write, which is our literacy support tool. And we're going to look specifically at the Google Chrome version, but please know if you're using any of our Read and Write versions, that would be Windows or Mac or iPad or Android or Edge, you will be able to do most of what we're going to be able to show you today. So when we talk about developing voice and choice, one of the things that we want to make sure that we do to empower our students, and this would be all students, of course, but in SEL or social emotional learning, we want to make sure that all students have that voice to be able to self-advocate for themselves, as well as being able to make choices that they want, as well as the ones that are best for them, which we can help guide them with. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Before we get into showing you all of the great strategies and things that you can do, I want to remind you that if you are a Read and Write for Google Chrome user, and we have over 30 million of them worldwide in 28 countries, please know that you can convert the entire Read and Write for Google Chrome program into 6 different languages. So, of course, you're probably familiar that it works in English, but it also works in UK English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, Dutch, and Malay, which is Malaysian. So that means that you can choose to have just the tools and the settings labels in a particular language of the choices I just gave you, or you can have the entire program function in that language as well. So if you were not aware of that, that can be a help for a lot of your students, especially those that are perhaps new to this country or whose English skills are not quite beyond basic. Now, we get super excited about this because there is just a natural fit with Read and Write and the tools that we have that are going to help our language learners. We have text-to-speech, which is, of course, going to help to increase comprehension. We know this because students who are not yet readers or writers are still learning a language through listening and speaking, so that's going to be a huge help for them to be able to keep up with grade level material. We have a single word translation feature that features over 60 languages, so you can have translation, and oftentimes you'll find that for an individual word, there are several different words that would be familiar in that language, depending on what country you're from. So that's going to really be inclusive of a lot of students depending on where they're from. We have a picture dictionary, which of course pictures we all like, but are going to be very helpful to those who are not as comfortable with English or the language that they're learning. We also have a vocabulary list builder, which is just everybody's fan favorite, really. As a teacher, I'll never get back the hours I spent creating vocabulary lists. So this is something that is going to take all the heavy lifting off the teacher, looking up all the definitions and pictures and putting it into a 4-column graphic organizer. So, and of course, it creates it as a Google Doc, so it's completely editable, so that you can you can make modifications to it that are going to be helpful for your student users. We have a number of tools that are going to help with writing, one of which is our word prediction. So if you're familiar with it on your phone, it's the same thing, only we give you more options than just 3 to choose from, and that can help students to get their ideas down. And we also have something called Check It, which is beyond a traditional spell checker. It's also going to check homophones and confusable words, so thinking of things like county and country, which are easily confused. So it's going to be able to help students to be able to make sure that everything they have down on the page is what they intended. Now, of course, you know that the essential skills for learning any language, we're going to always start with listening. That's a safe place. And that's true for having worked with reluctant readers and struggling readers. Listening is a safe place to learn anything, because that is where you're going to start with learning a new language anyway. From there, after you've had a chance to hear a language spoken, to hear words, how they're used, in what context, around what topics, you're going to try to speak them, because you're at a comfortable point where you can, of course, put down your thoughts or put out your thoughts or try it that way. There is a big bridge, however, that you're probably aware of, that from the listening and speaking to the reading and writing. I had many students, ELs in my class, who were very proficient with listening and speaking, but not yet really crossing the bridge completely into the reading and writing. So we want to talk about making that bridge and utilizing all of these: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So let's start off with the listening. That is, of course, where our students start. We want to make sure that our students are able to take in new information through listening, and we have a number of tools that are going to help with that. So first, as I had mentioned earlier, we do have actually 4 different text-to-speech tools that are available. Now, the one that you see on the screen in front of you, our text-to-speech with the play, pause, and stop button, are available on all of the toolbars. So that means if you're on not only a Google Doc, but if you're on a web page, or if you're on a slides presentation, or if you're on a PDF, you will have access to this particular tool. This is going to be a great help for our students because, again, if listening is where they are comfortable, then they're going to be able to take in information, as well as being able to see that word highlighted when they're hearing it. So it's going to help to build up that automaticity of I see it, I hear it, I know it. Now, this particular document you are going to have access to in the folder of documents we're sharing with you at the end of the session today. So please know that this is just a simple way to be able to show that we do have those 4 different text-to-speech tools. So we just talked about the read aloud tool. There is also a special tool on the web, which is called Hover Speech. It's a fantastic tool because, as you know, when you're on a web page, there are often things that are hyperlinked. So many websites have like a list of articles that are hyperlinked, and to try to highlight them and then click play is going to be cumbersome at best for anyone. The fact that you can simply turn on Hover Speech and literally hover without having to click or highlight anything, and it will be read, is a huge help. We also have Click to Speak, and that's available on our PDF toolbar. Click to Speak is a great thing because it will let you click and it'll read 1 sentence at a time. We always want there to be ways that students can choose how much information is coming at them at one time, and this is a way that they can have a little more control. And then finally, we also have something called the screenshot reader. Now, I refer to it as our secret weapon because it works on anything and everything. So if you don't know what to use, the screenshot reader is going to be your new BFF. However, it is especially developed to work on any kind of text that is embedded within an image. So think table, chart, map, graph, advertisement, some PDFs that are inaccessible. It will help to have any text that is embedded within that image to be read aloud. So that is really going to give students access to a whole lot more text than they would have had without them. Now, another tool that is going to be really helpful for the listening is the Audio Maker tool. Now, I don't know about Corey, but as a struggling reader who's gotten a lot of skills, but still really defaults to being an auditory learner, I love the Audio Maker because, especially as a former middle school person, well, I guess I'm always going to be a middle school person, but we know that there are fewer and fewer opportunities as students go through the grades to learn through listening. We just don't have opportunity or something already created or ready made to use listening as a vehicle for learning. So I love the fact that the Audio Maker is going to give you an option to choose text from either a Google Doc or from most web pages, and to create an MP3 file that can be shared with students so that they can simply listen. Now, this is wonderful for a variety of reasons. Obviously, for your students who get a lot of text thrown at them and they're not yet ready to take that in visually at the same time they're taking it in auditorily, that's going to be a help. But especially for, in my case, most of my students really struggled with having background information. In other words, they didn't have a place in their brains to be able to put this new information because they just didn't have any background. So building background for struggling readers without requiring them to read more is a win-win for everyone. So I want to take a moment and show you the text-to-speech as well as the Audio Maker and how you can create those MP3 files quickly and easily. So let me pull up. So here I have some text for you. Now, the first thing I want you to hear is our text-to-speech. So I am going to, since we're on a Google Doc, I'm going to launch the Read and Write for Google Chrome toolbar. You see here it's lowered into place. Now I can click anywhere within this first sentence and click play. And the reason I can do that, excuse me, is that I went in to our options, which are also known as settings, under speech, and I have unchecked continuous reading. Continuous reading is a beautiful thing for preview and review. If your students are adept at using the pause versus unpause, it's going to be a great thing. However, it's been my experience, at least with my students, that if they didn't have more control over it than the continuous reading, what would happen is they'd press play and it would start reading and it would go too fast, or they would get lost in their place, and then they start getting frustrated, and we know that's never a happy place for our students. So unchecking continuous reading is going to allow me to put my cursor anywhere within a sentence and click play. It's going to read the one sentence and then stop.
My name is Carmen and my husband's name is Alfred.
And that was too quiet. So let me do that again. Notice that if I read the sentence and I didn't understand it, or I need to make some adjustments, I can easily reread it by simply clicking play again.
My name is Carmen and my husband's name is Alfred.
Perfect. So if I understood that and I'm ready to move on, all I have to do is put my cursor anywhere within the next sentence and click play again.
Every day Alfred cooks breakfast for us.
So just that you know, the voice that I'm using is Ava, and I have her at a 43. So that's something that students are going to want to play with, is the voice that they're comfortable in listening to, as well as a good speed for them to take in that information. And I also, as a pro tip, I always showed students how to choose a speed that they were comfortable in reading, things that were easy for them or not difficult for them. And then always show them that good readers slow down when they're taking in more difficult concepts or new vocabulary. That is just a strategy that good readers use that most of our reluctant readers don't get to see happening. So they don't know that that's something that good readers do. So it's something you definitely want to tell students, that it's okay to slow down, to take something in, so you make sure that you're being careful to do so. All right, I also want to go ahead and show you in the options where we just were, in addition to the English voices that we have here, we also have a number of voices that are for other languages. So if I type in, for instance, Spanish, you can see that we have 2 Colombian voices, 2 Mexican voices, and 2 Spanish from Spain voices. So you can actually really drill down to get the voice that you are comfortable with based on the dialect and what you're listening to. So that's going to be helpful if the text, of course, is in that particular language. Otherwise, you can just look for the US English voices. And we have 4, Allison, Ava, Samantha, and Tom. I prefer Allison just because, I'm sorry, Ava, just because I can hear her pitch really well. But sometimes I change it up just to make sure that I am listening to a voice that I'm comfortable with and don't get too comfortable. I also wanted to show you, as I mentioned, the Audio Maker. So Audio Maker is a great feature because this is going to allow you to make an MP3 file that you can then share with students. Now, the students can listen to that MP3 file because it will be, if you upload it into your drive, it'll be in your drive and you can share it from there. But you also have the option of uploading it directly onto an email if you want to email it to a student. So students will be able to listen to the recording wherever they are. So if they're using and using a multitude of devices, if they're on a phone that has Drive, they can listen to it there. Or if they're on a phone that has an email attachment on it, they can listen to it there. They want to listen to it on an iPad, they can do that. They want to do it on a Chromebook or a PC or Mac, depending on what they have. So they've got some different options. Now, how do I make this audio file? I am going to run my cursor over this information, which lets our program know this is what we want changed into the MP3. I'm going to take you very quickly back to our options. So I have chosen Ava to read this at 43. Because this is going to make the audio file with the voice that you've chosen and the speed that you've chosen, please know it's going to make it quickly and easily. So if you listen to it and realize, you know, that's just too slow or that's too fast, you can make another recording in nothing flat. So that's really one of the nice features about this, even for a more lengthy piece of text than this. I'm going to click on the Audio Maker. When I do so, you'll notice there's a little progress bar right underneath the icon itself, which grays out for a moment. Then you'll notice that it flashes and pops into the downloads section of my computer. So here it is down here. Now, it will always put it into your downloads. Currently, there's no way for us to have it created and moved into your drive. Not that we can't eventually do that, but currently there's just no way to do that. And then what you want to do from here is if you're going to send it as an attachment on an email, you could just click and drag it onto that email. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this into a folder I have created for my MP3 recordings. And you saw how quick it was to upload that. You'll notice that every time you make an Audio Maker recording, it is numbered so that you know which one it is, but I would really encourage you to rename it. Now, if I was to share this directly from here, my drive with students, this is what students would see and hear.
Fixing meals. My name is Carmen and my husband's name is Alfred. Every day Alfred cooks breakfast for us.
So within this, students would be able to fast forward or reverse. They would be able to change the volume itself. The only thing they would not be able to change is the voice and the speed at which this is being read. But because it's so easy to make these, and I have worked with people who've done this, you could make 2 or 3 of these MP3 files. You could make them of the same content, just make them maybe in different voices or with different speeds. I can think, I've worked with several teachers who had regular ed kids, they had ELs, they had special ed kids, and so they wanted to make 3 different recordings at 3 different speeds so that they could share it with the students so that they would have something that they could take in at an appropriate speed. Something else that I wanted to show you that I always advocate for, which is one of the things that is really important, both with reading and with listening and taking in information, is having a purpose. So knowing why I'm listening or why I'm reading something. So one of the things we always want to make sure is our students know why or what we're listening to and what we need to know when we're done. Okay, so what is it that I need to know and what is it I'm going to have to do with this? So when I make recordings, I always suggest that people start off by adding directions at the top. And I could put in something like, you know, listen, to this short recording. And by the way, I always said they were short. um, when you are finished, you will need to tell me 5 facts about what occurred in this text. So by doing that, the first thing a student's going to hear is the directions. So they immediately know they're going to listen to a recording. When they're done, they're going to have to write down 5 facts, or they're going to have to tell me 5 facts. So they know what they're going to have to do. And that makes a difference because they're listening with purpose. I used to always say, you know, students who are not given a purpose for a reading assignment, we know that a student who is looking for nothing in a reading assignment usually finds it. So it's going to be just as important in reading as it is with listening to set that purpose so students know what they need to get out of it. Another thing that I'll give you as a pro tip on using this, I don't know about you all, but when I used to do the strategy KWL, it would bomb. I mean, bomb big. What do I mean by that? So I would say, you know, KWL, K column, what do you know? W, what do you want or need to know? And then L, what have you learned? So I would say, you know, okay, today we're going to read about tarantulas. What do you know about tarantulas? My kids would be like, not very much. No, I don't, nothing. I'd say, okay, so what do you want to know about tarantulas? And they go, not so much. And it would die, right? However, most of the time it did that because my students either didn't or were not willing to think back about what they knew about tarantulas. So this would be a fantastic activity to do and then give your students the KWL, because you could ask them to write down 5 facts they now know in the K column before they actually start with reading, if you're going to build background knowledge. So that would be something, or 3 facts. And we have writing tools I'm going to talk about, but I'm just getting excited because I really think that the Audio Maker is so hugely helpful and oftentimes overlooked or underutilized. Okay, any questions that have come in on that, Corey?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Lots of excitement.
Yay. Oops. Obviously, I'm getting excited too. Woo. Okay. Sorry, cruising through the slides. So in addition to a tool for listening, and this is where this is going to come in, this is going to come in nicely, and another one of those tools I really, really love, is that we have a tool for both listening and speaking, and that's our voice note tool. So voice notes is going to be a wonderful tool because this is going to allow students to record their own voice. So if they have a question, if there's something they don't understand, if they need some clarification, if they want to tell you what they're thinking as they're reading or what something reminds them of, so they're connecting with the text, which we really want our students to do. And they don't have, say, the keyboarding skills, they are not yet comfortable with writing in the new language. This is a way for them to still be able to participate with the listening and the speaking. This is also a fantastic opportunity for teachers to use the voice notes so that if they have the ability, they could speak to the student in their home language. They could give them encouragement. They could ask them questions. They could give them positive praise or feedback for something. So this is a wonderful way for you, in a more intimate way, to be able to have conversation when you have time with a student, being able to hear their voice and your voice. Now, voice notes allow you to create a voice comment. So just like a Google comment, but this is going to be a recorded comment. And the audio file will give you 1 full minute to make one. Now, before you panic on that, 1 full minute is a long time. You'd be stunned at how much you can say in a minute. Also, you can make as many voice notes per document as you wish. So you don't have to say everything that you want to say just in 1 minute. So that's a good thing. Also, we have tools for vocabulary. Now, we know that 75% of comprehension is based on knowing vocabulary. So when we get into the actual reading, it's going to be not only the word identification, but the word meaning, which is very important. So we want to give students tools so that they can find out meaning and word identification on their own, because everyone's different. The words that one student knows is not necessarily going to be the words other students know. So we want to make sure that they have a way to help themselves. We have a dictionary, which we refer to as a talking dictionary, and that's because it has definitions that all can be read aloud. So that auditory support for students who need it. We have a picture dictionary, which contains over 15,000 symbols and images, which are going to be really helpful for students having that visual cue and knowing that you can use our tools simultaneously. So you can use the dictionary with the picture dictionary. You can use the picture dictionary with the translator tool, which I had mentioned earlier, but the translator tool again is a single word at a time translation feature in over 60 languages. And then, as I mentioned earlier, also we have that vocabulary list builder that I'll be showing you, which is going to make teachers very, very happy. So let me pause there and show you the dictionary, the picture dictionary, the translator, and the VoiceNet features. Now this is going to be just a quick overview, but it's also going to show you a strategy that's going to be helpful for you that you can use over and over again because I'm giving you the template. So let me switch to perfect. So here is the strategy for helping our students to learn vocabulary. Now, this is tapping into all four core areas: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, which I love. You can see here that I have already chosen some of the tools that we have that can be helpful for students. And you are absolutely welcome to edit this as much as you need, depending on what your students need. I'm going to show you the full version, and then we can talk about what things you may want to take out. So first off, vocabulary words. Now, I will tell you that I loved learning Spanish, which is my second language, because when they taught it, they always taught words that were related together. So, you know, as you can see here, we have parts of the body, which makes complete sense. We had days of the week. We learned the colors. So this, as a former English language arts teacher, was really kind of tough, especially if we were reading a fictional story, because the words that my students may need to know may have nothing to do with each other. That's a frustration because, as I mentioned earlier, when you learn something new, your brain is immediately looking for a folder you already have in your brain that's set up that has something the same or similar. So if you're doing Dog Tulip Airplane, your brain is like, what? I don't know where to put this. So as often as you can possibly teach words that are related, the better students are going to hang on to those words. So starting off with super simple, but very much fun for our students, is the picture dictionary. So you can see where what I've done is asked students to click and drag from the picture dictionary. So let me pop my picture dictionary open, and I can look a word up. Love this. So I love the fact that our picture dictionary has multiple meaning words in ways that we don't even think of. So I'm thinking hand, there's only going to be one picture. Silly me. Obviously, there's more than one hand. So this is great because the student has to think, you know, which one would be appropriate based on what we're seeing already. And obviously, being able to click and drag that picture will help me to remember what it is. Now, something that's interesting that I really do like about our picture dictionary, the skin colors, and there are multiple ones, change each time you look something up. So that they're always changing, which is nice because I think that's very inclusive. So you can look up a word in the picture dictionary, and even though you may think this is a very basic thing, there is some higher level thinking going on as you're looking at another multiple meaning word, which is, you know, you've got the part of the body. This one's showing you it's this part right here or this part right here, but also, of course, a foot can be a unit of measurement. So this is a great activity for students, and students generally like this, and all students are able to do that. Also, we have the picture dictionary. I'm sorry, the dictionary or talking dictionary. this is indicated by an open book. So I'm going to pull this out. Now, for the dictionary itself, you click on the word, it will look it up. You'll notice here that we have a number of definitions, but each one can be read aloud. Even though these look like bullet points, they're actually play buttons. So I can click.
Noun. A part of your body between your head and shoulders. She tied a scarf around her neck.
Beautiful. So that's the one I want. I don't even have to keep reading. I probably would because I'm not kind of kid. I'm going to copy and paste this. So I now have the definition. And I don't want it to be all bolded. That's better. Okay, so now I have the definition. However, we know that just because you have copied a definition does not mean that I understand what the definition is saying. So that's where moving on to our talk and type is going to be helpful. Now, I have not mentioned this before, but I want to show you how easy it is to use. So the talk and type is speech to text. So you speak and it will type for you. So it's like dictation, if you will. So this way, you can see under talk and type, I said, tell me how you're going to remember the word or the definition into your own words. So let me see if I can come up with how I'm going to remember this. I am going to remember brain because it is the organ in my head that controls most of my body, period. There we go. And I always say, if you are not sure if it got what you said correctly, in other words, it heard you correctly, the best thing that you can do is to click on the play button and have it read it back.
I am going to remember brain because it is the organ in my head that controls most of my body.
That's good. It's got exactly what I wanted. Now, the reason I always say use the text-to-speech to read it back is because even though we would like to think we can catch errors easily visually, more often you're going to be able to catch errors by hearing it. It's like hitting a sour note. You're like, ooh, that's not right. So that's a good thing as far as being able to get your thoughts down. And again, looking at ELD, we know that this is going to be helpful for students who are not yet at that writing stage, but still we want to hear what they're thinking and make sure that they're included and they get their voice. We also, as I mentioned, the voice note feature. So you can see here what I have suggested is record your voice saying the word 3 times or using it in a sentence. Now, why say the word 3 times? We know that students who cannot say a word out loud are not likely to be hearing it in their head if they're reading. So if they're silently reading, they are not hearing that word unless they can hear themselves pronounce it. So that's one reason why it would be great for students just to say the word several times. Now, if they are comfortable with saying it in a sentence, that's fine. But what I know for sure is that if a student has never seen that word before, the last thing they're going to want to do is to put it in an original sentence. We don't want to set our kids up for failure. We want to make sure that they have choice. As you can see here from most of these directions, I try to give 2 different choices as to what to do with the tool. So I'm going to use this in a sentence. So here is the voice note feature. When you click on it, it is going to open up a ribbon across the top with a 1-minute countdown timer. I'm going to click on the microphone and it's going to start recording. So watch the countdown timer. Oh, wait, before I do that, I'm sorry. I meant to explain this first. Let me go back to this. So my voice note is here because when you highlight something, this is where you can add that comment, the Google comment. So you can see I can add a Google comment. And as I had mentioned earlier, we know that our ELs, again, depending on where they are developmentally with English, typing may not be a happy place for them. So having to write or keyboarding, we know that students with print disabilities, such as students with dyslexia, are going to be challenged. And I have a lot of kids who just didn't have very good keyboarding skills, and they would get highly frustrated because they couldn't get their thoughts down as quickly as they could think them. So that's why having that voice note feature is going to be a great thing. Okay, so let's see. I have often wondered why it is so easy to get my head through the banister and so difficult to get it back out. Okay, so there you go. There's my example sentence. I can listen to it. If I don't like it, I can re-record right over it. But if I click the insert, Corey and I are definitely middle school teachers. So I can listen to this. I have often wondered why it is so easy to get my head through. Okay, so not that I ever did that as a child, not telling the truth. Okay, so you have that here as an option, and the reason that my voice note is here is so that you have something to attach it to. So that's just as a last help. And then finally, here, I'll go ahead and clear that. Finally, I'm going to open up the picture dictionary again, just because I'm in the habit of doing so. Oh, it's such a cute picture for Maya. Look at that. The translator tool. So just to make sure that everyone knows, we have a single word at a time translator. And the reason that we have that is because, of course, to bring you read and write for Google Chrome, we have to partner with Google. And Google has already given you the option of translating the entire document. So you can translate your entire document and you would just choose your language. And I know you have over 50 languages to choose from here. So if that's what you want to do, you can absolutely do that. If you want to translate less information than the entire document, you could use Google Translate. The extension, I happen to have it. I prefer to translate less information at a time, so maybe a couple sentences or a paragraph, so you can do that. However, our single word translation is going to give you several different words in each language. I'm not saying that right. It is going to give you a choice of words in the language that you choose. So let me just show you, because it's not coming out like I want it to. All right, so here is the translator tool. Please know that I have it already set to Spanish because Spanish is the default setting for all of North America. So if you would prefer to translate into a different language, you can do so. This is the options. This is the bottom of the speech panel. And you can see here that we have all the languages you can translate the entire program into. And then you have all of the additional languages alphabetically by the name of the language, followed by the name of the language in the language. So you can choose what you need there. And then I'm going to click on neck. Okay, so we've got pictures for neck. We also have a number of words for neck. So
Cuello,
is the word that I'm familiar with, but
pescuezo,
or even
garganta,
or perhaps
besuquearse.
So all of these are to give students, obviously Spanish speakers, options for the words that they're comfortable with knowing or hearing or recognizing for a particular word. So now this is not going to be the case for every single language or every single word, but I just like the fact that if I'm familiar with one word and not another because of where I'm from or what I hear at home, I'm going to get more options. And that's why we have a single word translation, but we do have a little bit more option in it. Okay, so finally, just to kind of wrap up this strategy, you could choose, and again, you know your kids' needs better than anyone, you could choose to eliminate some of these categories if you want to. So if you just want students to start with a picture dictionary, and then maybe the talk and type or picture dictionary and the voice note, you can eliminate columns based on the need. You can expand them for what the students need. But I really like the fact that it takes students through 5 different tools with options for what they're doing with that particular tool. So they've got that choice, and we're giving them a voice to be able to tell us what they're thinking about it, how they're going to remember it, a sentence that they've got, whatever's going on in their head to be able to use their voice to tell us. So hopefully you'll find this is a really good template that you can use over and over again for whatever vocabulary that you're teaching. And are there any questions on that?
No, I think everybody, I got a lot of really happy teachers who are excited to use the tools, but no questions at this time.
Okay, very good. That means me and I'm making a lot of sense today, and I love that. Love that. Okay, so We have a help sheet, if you will, that is also in this miraculous magic folder that we're giving you. You have to, I promise you, we're giving this folder to you. It's at the end. You just have to hang in there. The anticipation I can tell is killing you. But we wanted to give some suggestions for the different levels of learners. So of course, your students with extremely limited English proficiency, the translator tool is going to be very helpful. Even if they are not necessarily literate in their home language, because so many of the languages in the translator can be spoken, so the student can hear them, the words. The audio makers I went over at length, again, starting where our students start with that listening. And then the picture dictionary, because those picture clues are going to be helpful. We know, especially if you've ever traveled overseas, anytime there's a picture, you can point to it. That's very helpful. Moving into our students who are more intermediate, so they have some conversational English or the language that we're talking about. They have some ability to communicate, but they're not proficient yet. That text to speech is going to be a huge help with being able to understand what they've got. Now, the vocabulary list builder is going to be appropriate for, I would say, almost all of your students, but probably a little overwhelming for your basic ones. So the vocabulary list is a great one, especially because they're modifiable. I hope that's a word. If not, I just made it up.
I was going to say that's a nice word.
I like that word. I'm going to start using that word more often. So it's modifiable, which means that you can make some modifications to it and then share it with students, but students can also add what they need to it. So it's really a collaborative document, which I love. And the word prediction is also going to be a help for students to be able to help them with word choices. I have not yet gotten into the word prediction, but the nice thing about it is you can hover over the choices. So you can see on the right here, the choices. You can hover over each one and it will say the word aloud, which is really helpful. I would say not just for our ELs, but all students, because so often they know the word they want when they hear it, but they don't always recognize it when they see it in print. So they may have help, but if they don't recognize that the word's there that they want without being able to hear it, that would be not so helpful. And then, of course, we have a section just getting started for our advanced students. So those are the students who are really concentrating on the academic core vocabulary and things that are going on with the classroom activities. The talking dictionary is going to be a big help. Now, I haven't gotten into this, but the practice reading aloud is a fantastic tool. And I know Corey's going to show this with being able to give students a way to practice their oral fluency by being able to hear how they sound reading. And it's a beautiful thing because I love opportunities, especially as a former middle school teacher, for students to figure things out for themselves. It keeps me from being the big bad wolf all the time. So they can say, oh, yeah, I do kind of blow through end punctuation without me having to tell them. Also, the talk and type, which I showed you, is going to be a help, again, as students are probably typing in English, which is maybe not their home language. They'll be able to use talk and type, and then they can use that text to speech to help them. So there's a document that has all three of this one-page document, but I wanted to kind of go over that with the various levels. Okay, and if there are no other questions, then I'm going to turn this over to Corey.
Awesome.
And I'm making, yes.
Awesome, perfect. All right, everybody. I am going to be, can you see my screen?
I can.
Perfect. So I'm going to be leading us into a strategy called close reading, and we're going to be utilizing a web page to do the strategy and work through the read and write toolbar. You got a lot of the toolbar with Kimberly, but I'm just going to work through a strategy, the close reading strategy, and the toolbar as you can see it on a web page. And we're going to use some Google Docs as well, so you can see how it works on a Google Doc, although you already did see some of that with Kimberly. So really, we're going to focus more on the web page. And I'm going to work through the close reading because many of you might have done this in the classroom, and we really want to make sure that what you understand is that the toolbar is used as an enhancement of what you're already doing in the classroom. It's not meant to be content. So We don't want you to see it as like added stress or added work for you and your students. It's really there to help them and ease the stress of what you're doing and what the students are doing. So close reading is really a strategy where teachers establish a purpose for reading, and what you're doing with the passage is it's kind of usually it's higher, it's more complex reading, it's kind of higher reading level, maybe something that's going to be challenging for the student, maybe higher vocabulary. And so students or a group of students or partners are going to be reading a passage several times, and each time they read, the teacher will be establishing a purpose for that reading. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to have a guiding question or a focus question, and today we're going to be asking, how do forest canopies create microclimates where tens of thousands of other plant species grow? And this is going to be our link to our webpage. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And we'll be toggling back and forth between this webpage, Canopies Enhance Plant Biodiversity, Forest Canopies, and our slide deck of our training. So I also did several different Google Docs that you can utilize yourself. One is student correlating Google Doc that is something the students can utilize. It's working with highlighters. You have a title, passage, root, suffixes, prefixes. If you're wanting to utilize this, you can modify it any way you want. There's always going to be text-dependent questions on your first, second, and third reads. These are questions that students will be focusing on as they read, and they directly correlate with those focus or those purpose for reading. And then we have a summary chart that you can utilize as well. This is also, I like to call it the output section of the close reading. It's
Corey,
a little bit.
Can you make
Yes.
it larger, please?
Oh, sure.
We can't see. Thank you.
I can't see.
We can't see.
There it is. So this is the output section. This is kind of the third read task that we would be doing. So this is where we're going to be utilizing some other areas of the toolbar, and we'll get to that again on that third read. And then we have a self-monitoring strategies that students can utilize throughout their reading as well. Visualizing, asks questions, drawing conclusions, rereading for clarifying. These are all things that we're going to be doing as we're reading or working through our three reads. Okay, so diving right in, our first read, we are going to be focusing on main ideas and details. Our text-dependent questions we will be asking ourselves will be, what is this text about? And what are some key details of the text? And what we're going to be utilizing in this first read are our highlighters. And we're going to be highlighting in yellow our main idea. And we're going to be marking our key details in green. And to save time, I have already read this passage, and it is very complex. So this is more of a higher, I would say, probably grade 5 through middle school and above text for sure. And I'm going to go ahead and put the read and write purple puzzle piece up. Just click on that and you see the toolbar come up. This little icon here is, you can move it all around. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick it right up here. I'm going to be, again, utilizing my highlighters here. These are all the highlighters. This sweeping little broom is to clear your highlights, and this is going to be collecting highlights. So I'm going to be utilizing all of these. And again, yellow is going to be my main idea, and the green is going to be our key details. So I've established that it's a place where thousands, maybe millions of species have evolved, many of which never touch land. I've established that I think that is my main idea for this passage. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in yellow. And one thing I forgot to do is when I'm reading or in a group, I encourage my students to go ahead and stick up the dictionary and the picture dictionary. And this is really important because students can go ahead and access knowledge real time as they're reading. If they're struggling with words, or a group of students are struggling with the word, they can access that word or that picture and discuss it and really gain deeper knowledge as they're reading. And especially, say you might designate a roles in your groups, and maybe you have a leader who's reading and he can really, or she can really push thinking by doing this as well. Okay, and then we're going to be reading now for the details or key details that you think might be important, and we're going to be highlighting those in green. And one key detail that I thought was super important was that although climate affects what plants thrive in the overstory, microclimates created by canopies are what elicit biodiversity within them. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this whole sentence as one of the key details. And then I also thought that light, temperature, humidity, and available nutrients vary even at the scale of individual leaves, allowing plants to find pockets where conditions suit their specific needs. So I thought that was another key detail, and I'm going to highlight that in green. And then there's one other key detail that I thought was really interesting. The forest canopy ecosystem is so conducive to biodiversity that it houses 10% of the world's vascular plant species. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that in green as well. So now I have my main idea, and I have my 3 key details, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to gather those up with my collect highlights. And I'm going to go ahead, you could either collect them or sort them by color or position. I'll just go ahead and collect them by color because we know that the main idea will be in yellow and all the key details will be in green. So I'm going to go ahead and collect them. And you can see what they're doing right now is it's creating another Google Doc. And as you see, it has pulled those highlighters into a main idea and the key details. And then what it's also done is it has cited that web page. So you have the web page here cited. And I'm going to go ahead and, whoops. I apologize for that. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, I must have clicked that out. I apologize.
It's okay, it happens.
I know.
At least you don't have as many tabs as I have a tendency to have open.
Oh my goodness. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and call this biodiversity. Oh my goodness. First read. But then also what you can do at this point is you can have students talk about, this is a good area to talk about plagiarism and putting these, this main idea and key details in their own words, because what we really did is we just pulled word for word straight from the web page. So this is a really great area to talk about summary and how can we modify this and really bring it into our own words. So we have our first read here. And going back to our close reading strategy, we are now going on to our second read. In our second read, our text-dependent questions will be, how does the text structure help you understand the text? We're thinking about titles and subtitles, maps and our pictures and the language. And when we're talking about language, we're talking about vocabulary words. We're also talking about multiple meaning words and figurative language. Academic language, we're talking about not only the general academic language, but also domain-specific language. So we're really thinking about all of that when we're doing this second read. And as I click back to our web page, I'm going to, since we've already covered our first read, I'm going to go ahead and select all of those highlights I did on the first read, and I'm going to sweep those away. I'm going to go ahead and clear those highlighters on that first read because I no longer need them. So they're all clear. And I'm also going to go ahead for time purposes, and I'm going to skip those, the subtitles and those titles, that text structure, because we already know, I mean, those are pretty obvious, right? Those are the titles, the pictures. These are the pictures. The cool thing about this is we have pictures and we have these subtitles here, or not only the subtitles, but what explains the picture. That's really cool. These are really great ways to help the student learn more about what the passage is actually about. But we're going to go ahead and skip that portion, and we're going to go right into our vocabulary. And our vocabulary, we are going to just go ahead and highlight words, and we're going to highlight them in blue. And again, this vocabulary in this passage are really higher level. So this really is a passage for upper elementary, upper middle, and beyond. So I'm going to go ahead and click some of these words. And you already got a little bit of well, not a little bit, you got a lot of awesome vocabulary strategies from Kimberly earlier. Let's see.
Thank you for saying that.
It's true. It's really true. I love it. I can't wait to use it.
$5 I owe you later.
Thanks. I was hoping you would remember that. I need a coffee.
Okay, done.
Okay, so I got several words. They're highlighted in blue, and I'm gonna go right over to this icon, and this is the vocabulary icon. I'm gonna go ahead and click that, and as you see, what it's doing is the same thing it did with the collect highlighters. It's gonna gather all those vocabulary words, and it's gonna pull it into a separate doc. Now, what I'm gonna do here is, well, as you can see here, it gathers the word, it gathers the meaning if there is one, and it gathers the symbol if there is one. However, what you can also see is that there's no meaning, say, for canopies, or there's no symbol or picture for canopies. And then there's this notes column. And you can do whatever you want with this notes column, but I'm going to go right up to file, and I'm going to page setup, and I'm going to go ahead and put this into landscape. Now, thinking about what you've done with, or what Kimberly did earlier, we can modify this in the same way that she did all of those other tools that she utilized, right? But there's some things that we can do here that are really amazing. You see, if you look at energy, there's so many different definitions for energy. So this is an area where we can discuss with our students, or the group can discuss what is the best meaning for the word. And is it the meaning that is used in the passage? Now, when we're looking at canopies, let's just go ahead, since there's no meaning, let's go ahead and highlight that word with our cursor. We're going to go up here and utilize the web search, and it'll bring up a web search of the word canopies. Now, canopy in our daily lives mean this, right? But if we say, okay, well, we're talking about canopy, the forest kind, because that's what we're reading about is forest canopy, it'll then bring up something that looks more like what we're reading. And then it'll also bring up a definition. So if we do that and we just utilize Wikipedia, because it's much better now than it used to be, right? Then we can kind of just pull this up and utilize the Wikipedia definition and drop that into our vocabulary. And then we can also pull in the picture, any picture we want as well, and drop it in. But then we can also utilize all those other awesome tools that Kimberly used earlier, right? And then we can move this around and do whatever we want. We can talk about canopy. What are we talking about canopy? Microclimate. We can talk about the prefix and suffix and what those mean. We can really do so much with this vocabulary list. And this vocabulary list, we can also say vocabulary list, biodiversity, second read, right? And so we can really kind of do a lot with this section here. Any questions so far, Miss Kimberly?
No, but based on some of the things that comments people are making, one of the things that I think that I would like for you to highlight is the advantages or benefits to close reading.
Thank you so much. So what this really helps with is a deeper understanding and a deeper comprehension of the text and the subject, right? So the deeper we're diving into not only what we're reading and how we're reading it and the vocabulary, what is happening here is the student is really identifying with the subject and those vocabulary words, and they're starting to comprehend what they're reading more. And when we say close reading, there's usually 3 reads. There's usually, but that's not a give or take, right? So they might need to read a certain passage over several times because there's language in a certain passage that they don't understand or they don't know. There might be some domain specific language that is a real struggle. And especially in science subjects, that language, or math subjects where they're learning different vocabulary or a different content area that is just very difficult, they may need several run-throughs of a passage or maybe a unit to really comprehend and understand what they're reading. So by reading several times through, by understanding the main idea in detail, by really working through that vocabulary and the language and the text structure and the pictures and all these different areas of close reading, the comprehension comes. And so by the end of the 3rd read, that's from the 1st read, it's really about that comprehension and that deep understanding of the text. Does that help, Miss Kimberly?
I think that's excellent. And I'm since you're passing it back to me, I'm going to piggyback off of what you just said.
Do it, girl.
Okay. So you want to go ahead and hand it back to me and I'll finish it out there. So
yes, but I haven't gotten to the 3rd read.
I'm sorry. Never mind.
No, I can go real fast.
No, don't go real fast. Just do you. You do you. You're doing great. I apologize. I forgot.
No, but that's really where this last read comes in. It's really about that synthesizing insights and making inferences and making those connections. So I'm glad that you said that, because that's exactly what's happening in this 3rd read. This 3rd read, the text-dependent questions are just that. What does the author want the reader to understand? What do you think the author's opinion is about the subject, and how do you know? What were you thinking in the 1st read? What didn't you know, and what do you know now? What are some new vocabulary words that you understand and know now? Those types of things are what are discussed in that 3rd read or after that 3rd read. So we don't really need to go back to the text, but that's really what's happening in this 3rd read. So you can I definitely want to give it back to you for sure.
Okay.
Oh, and some extensions. We'll go into you finish with the writing piece, and there's a writing checklist, so you can finish with that writing piece, and you're writing about that focus question, which is that how do forest canopies create microclimates where tens of thousands of other plant species grow? That is basically our main idea, right? And so you're writing about that. Why is that? How is that? You want to have partners.
Setting purpose. Yeah. That's what we just talked about. That's setting purpose. The student has something to look for from the get
exactly
each time they read it. So it's awesome.
Right, exactly. And then we do want to have conversations. The students want to be conversing throughout all the reads, right? So that periodic discussion with students, with partners, with, if we're doing group setting, with each other, with a big group, but with each other as well. Just definitely continue to have conversations. And then there's some extensions there as well. So with that, now I would love to turn it back to you, girl. But you're going to have to give it back to yourself.
Okay, that is, I have to make myself a presenter. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Okay, well then just to piggyback on that. So I love close reads, and here's why. Working with students who are struggling or reluctant readers, there is, especially in middle school, there is an unwritten rule that says you can't read the same thing twice. And so, and this used to occur all the time. I would say, okay, we're gonna read, fill in the blank. And they'd say, oh, we've already read that. And that means we can't possibly do it again, and don't ask us. So having the close reads, I would say to them, okay, well, we're gonna analyze this text. We're gonna get into it. So you wanna start with a brand new one that you've not read before to analyze? Oh, no. So you're gonna reread the same text, but you already have kind of a leg up, or you've almost cheated because you've already checked out the vocabulary and looked at the main idea, supporting details. So getting the closer read is giving students new purpose for reading the same text that they're already familiar with, which I think is maximum benefit, minimal effort. But it quelled my own students. They were like, oh yeah, okay, well, we can read this again because we're doing something different with it. And they weren't having to struggle through it again. So I thought that was good.
Yes,
and
for sure.
I won't spend a load of time on the vocabulary list, but I did want to mention a couple of things, obviously. So the first thing is that we know that there are certain things, certain categories that you can add to, change, modify your vocabulary list with, which are going to help students, especially your ELs, to better understand and retain the word meaning. So we know that definitions are going to be really helpful, but important that they are in language that's clear or makes sense. It's even better if you can get the student to put the definition into words they'd actually use. And of course, if it's helpful to have the definition in the student's home language, and that's possible, which I would say by the number of translation languages we have, that probably is. Synonyms, so something similar to what they already know. And again, that can be in English or it can be in the student's home language. We know ELs need and like and want pictures. So images, signs, symbols, photos, diagrams, anything that's visual there is going to be super helpful for those kids. We also know that anytime that they can connect with something that's happened in their own personal experiences, that's going to help them to remember that information or that particular word. And that's also going to be really helpful if they don't necessarily have any personal experience, but they can say, oh, I saw a movie that had a scene where, or there's this TV show that I've watched and there was this one episode where, or there's this video game that I play, or I saw this video on YouTube, or whatever. It doesn't always have to be personal experience. I think that's important to note, because students don't, they have widely varied personal experiences. And then anytime you can get students to give you examples, can you tell me, the kinds of, or the parts of, or any kind of specifics, characteristics of, any of those things are going to be helpful to better define it. So you're thinking, okay, so you've given me these 5 categories. What are we going to do with that? Well, I'm so glad you asked. So there is, well, first let me build one very quickly. Now, I'm going to build one with easier words because of the text I chose from earlier. So I'm just going to build one very quickly. Keeping in mind, when you click on the vocabulary list icon itself, it is looking for words that have been highlighted with one of our 4 colors. The color itself doesn't matter. If I wanted to highlight every single word with yellow, I can do that. I just need to make sure that I am highlighting it with one of our 4 colors. When I click on the vocabulary list, it is going to let me know in the upper right-hand corner that it is building it. Please know that this is the only tool on the entire toolbar, or any of the toolbars, that does not occur instantaneously. So what it is doing is it's picking up all those definitions, it's picking up all of the vocabulary, and it's placing and creating what you see here. There are a number of things that are going to impact how long it takes to build this, Wi-Fi strength, number of words you've chosen, etc. So you do want to let it do its thing. It should appear, I would say, within 1 minute. If it's not within 2, then you need to check and see what has gone wrong. But generally, it will build within a minute. So that's helpful. Now, a couple of things that we want to make sure that you know, you can totally edit this. So it is, what was the word I used? Modifiable?
Modifiable.
I do like that.
Love it. I do.
I do. So as Corey mentioned, you want to rename this because the word untitled is there. So where did this come from? And this came from Fixing Meals. And I would probably rename it here the same thing. Oops. So I know where these words came from. As Corey mentioned, anytime I have a table or chart, I always change the page setup from portrait to landscape. Makes it easier to add additional columns, to modify the size of the column. So if you have students, for instance, and this was a thing for my students, if the text was tiny, they would tell me it was too hard. And I'd say, but you didn't even try reading it yet. And they'd go, it's little, meaning it's too difficult because it's in 10-point font. And they're right, because big books don't come in 10-point font, they come in 72-point font. So the smaller the text, the more difficult they assume that it is, and generally they're right. So if it's a help for the student, make the text larger. Super simple, easy to do. If it makes them less reluctant, why not? Another thing that I would suggest, and this always makes people gasp, but all the pictures come from our picture dictionary. Oops, I'll go. Look, I've got it on fried. So bacon. So please note, you could delete all the pictures and have the student click and drag the picture over, keeping in mind that that's going to hit a different area of the brain as far as remembering that information. And students want to be able to create something. So why not let them? It's easy. They get to choose their own picture. So whatever resonates with them. Another thing that you can do here, I never had a student of any age who knew what they were supposed to do with a column called notes. They didn't know what they're supposed to be noting. It wasn't like concrete enough. So you could add a different, so my definition, so this is where I'd want my student to put the definitions into words that they would actually use. And I may choose example as I want them to give me an example here. So that could be where they've heard the word, where they've seen the word, what experience they've had with the word, so we can do that as well. And this is because I have placed this document in the folder for you all to use. This is making some suggestions on modifications that you may want to make to your vocabulary list. So hear me out. We know kids can make these for themselves, 100%. However, what I find is that generally, if students make them for themselves, they're not going to get as much out of it because the thought process behind this, like changing the different columns, choosing what you want your categories to be, so that you can set this up where students are having to choose a definition or the correct definition. You can take it down to the one correct definition, because that used to throw my kids too. 7 different definitions would be overwhelming, but we know ELs it would be. So you can take it down to just the right one so they can focus on that. Letting them choose that symbol or that picture, having them, and then, again, remember all the tools that you can use here. You can use talk and type. You can use voice note to get your thoughts down about what the definition is. And then you can choose from these different categories that I have listed here. So comparisons to something they already know. They could copy and paste the context sentence. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't want my students to write original sentences with words they just learned for the very first time. That's not fair. So having them have a context sentence as an example would be a good thing and be helpful for them. Tell me what category that particular item is from. So, you know, bacon, what category? It's from the meat category. And then again, anytime they can tell you how they're going to remember something, so memory clues or any connections that they have, and changing these categories up so that it's always not the same. But the kids generally respond better to this because they, first of all, are learning the words as they're working through the different boxes. Plus, they're a lot more likely to study from something that they have had a hand in creating. So I just wanted to give you that, excuse me, as a suggestion, something that you could do that would make it more meaningful for everybody. Corey, do you have any questions, or are there any other questions?
I have no questions. And I think everybody is just excited to get started with this. So I think everyone is good to go. Good to go.
And that then brings us the touted folder that you were going to get at the end of the presentation is now here. So a couple of things that are here from as our resources from today's webinar. The first one is the link you see at the top is going to give you a document that is a hyperdoc. All of the links on that document are to resources we have for our ELs. We also have, and by the way, the resources there are not only things that we already have translated into other languages, but also things that are appropriate for using with ELs. Then we have the source folder, our resource folder. So that is RW, meaning read and write, ELD resources. So that's why you have, and it is case sensitive, or you can just click on it. And then finally, today's slides presentation. So you can click on that for the slide presentation, but please note the presentation, the slides is going to be in the resource folder. So it's a one-stop shop. Everything you're going to want, it's going to be in that resource folder, except for that document that is there at the top. And
Done. That was amazing. So anybody has any questions, please contact, you have our contact information on that first and second slide. And we are here for you if you need us. Please enjoy these slides and utilize them. It's a great tool, and you have a lot of resources in this slide deck. So again, we're here for you, and thank you so much for watching this recorded slide deck.
And have a fabulous day. Thanks for all that you do for kids. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.